money is a triggering topic for all people.
But I definitely think that our social norm should be that you're not using our Slack community or our communal meals to push your business ideas and get good clients.
I've worked jobs where a manager will ask me to do something that's not in my job description. I'm like, what the hell, dude? Why am I working nights and weekends? I have a fixed salary, I have fixed hours.
Yeah, and I think the point was there's no right or wrong. It's just...
It makes sense for this context.
Right.
I think we should 100% decide communal funds are not being spent on the village members' time.
And I know that if I had actually paid all of you for the time you've spent and the whole year leading up to this, I wouldn't have been able to afford the trip.
I think the stuff that we've learned building this is invaluable.
Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of the Traveling Village podcast. I'm Asha, I'm a village member. I'm here with Nikolai, who is the founding member, and Kiran, who is one of the founding families. So today is all about money. We're going to talk about money. But first I want to do a check-in and hear about highs and lows over the last 2 weeks or so. I can start. My low would be getting stomach flu, some kind of stomach bug for the 3rd time since getting here.
Island bugs.
Yeah, really rough. And then I would say my high was, there was a ladies' night for the village, and a lot of the dads offered to take my son for the evening so I could go and attend. And that was really cool. And I got back and my son had the time of his life hanging out with all the big boys. I think you were there, right?
Yeah, because we all love Kev. And I think this is the first time we got to just kind of hang out with him. He asked for you a couple times, but he was pretty cool with us. And it was great. He played around with all the other kids. We watched the fire show together. It was touch and go only a couple times, but we had the time of our lives too.
He did not want to come home. Yeah. I went to pick him up at 10:30 p.m. He was watching movies with all the boys. And he's like, no. And then he was lying in bed that night saying, happy, happy, happy. Aww. He did not want to go to sleep.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. How about you?
I mean, that was one of my highlights, but I have to give my highlight to the film festival. I had a great time. Nehang, who is another founding family member, he had this idea, and he always goes big, this guy, right? He always wants to do something big. And instead of just everyone kind of making their own films, we had a 3-day workshop. We converted a restaurant into a theater space. Everyone had popcorn and drinks, and then we played all the movies at the end.
That was super fun.
It was so fun. And I made a film myself, so I had a great time making the film with Saksh and Kev. Kev was in our film. And
you helped teach one of the workshops, right?
Yeah, I did the first one, the storytelling workshop. So it just scratched all the itches. I love attention, but I also love the teaching aspect of things, and all the kids were really into it. The challenging part was the school aspect of things, I think, and at some point when we do the education episode, we might talk about this, but a lot of kids in the village, because they've either never gone to school or they haven't gone to school in a while, sitting down for a 45-minute workshop is like an alien concept. So maybe we should have tailored the expectations accordingly.
Yeah.
But
it was almost set up like a lecture hall, right?
Yeah.
Or
it was like a conference place.
Conference.
Rented out. Insurance conference. Everyone with lanyards. Yeah.
But on the 3rd day, it was interesting because one of the members who was leading that one, they took a totally different approach, had them all kind of sit down, the editing part, just in the front all together. So that was interesting.
That's great.
See the different ways people teach.
That was my highlight. Low light is probably, I guess, my immunity is not used to this place. I think.
You're sick again, right?
I'm sick again. And so my voice is a little raspy if I don't have my usual vibe, the power in this podcast, you know why.
Yeah, I think my high was probably just realizing that this place is actually pretty magic, especially for the kids, of course. But I was just had a conversation with someone that, in 6 months or a year, what we will remember, a lot of it will be this place and the kids running around. And, I had so many conversations with people here because we're all together. It's been really hard for me here, but it's also, there's so many beautiful things. And that was kind of what we wanted. We're living in co-living setups in all 3 locations. And it's probably a little bit too much for me as a person, but I'm really happy that we did it. And it's intensive, but I think as a family, we're learning so much. And had we just been traveling ourselves, we would have been here maybe a few days and then off to another place.
I would have been out the first week.
but just going through it and realizing like so many beautiful things, and my kids are really loving it here, and so I think that's been my high. My low is probably still just that I have a really hard time finding a balance with work, kids, the other things I want to do. I think that's super difficult, and it's not helping with the heat. I just have less resources. So I think that's been my low, that I've just been super tired, and it's difficult to do the things that I normally do. And
every day I'm going to bed exhausted. Like
exactly,
pure exhaustion just from heat.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that this is the location where we've done the most workouts. Like,
yeah,
we live a tough life in the village.
And I have to say, because I think our last podcast episode was a little bit veering on the negative side of this place, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, we only have like a week left, and I actually feel kind of sad about leaving, surprisingly.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible experience, especially for the kids, but I've like come around to it too.
Yeah.
And just getting to like know people better, and I don't know, it's actually been, like you said, kind of magical in a way.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is the place I'm going to remember.
Absolutely. So that's definitely my high of the last week, that there's just been a mindset change for me personally about this place. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Doesn't happen that much.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to actually dig into the whole idea of money, because money can be a really challenging subject to talk about, sometimes triggering. So I want to talk about money in the traveling village and all about that. So first, let's go into why you decided on a nonprofit versus profit.
Yeah, I think just in general, we had the idea, but we didn't have like a final solution. So having like a nonprofit was also just a way to lower expectations. Where if you put a high price tag on stuff and you need to earn money, then, people come in with different expectations. And I really wanted this to be an experiment.
Yeah.
I want to try out things. And a part of that is that it's not going to be perfect. So I kind of felt that it was the only right thing to do.
But look, it's not even non-profit if you look at it, right? Right. It's even, I would say this is like an even lower tier of entity where we're like limiting losses, but it's really a group of friends traveling. But it's a group of friends that we've met online and we haven't created a formal entity around this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no one's getting paid, unlike a non-profit where you would pay
some people. Yeah.
Some people.
But the distinction is just, I think, that this could have been a for-profit project.
100%.
Because there's some people who spend a lot of time doing the work and getting families in and stuff like that. And I think it was the total right solution to make it a non-profit project, because it's kind of worked out, and we all, it's so cool to see that people are creating stuff and helping out and planning events, film festival, training and stuff like that. And so many of these things would probably change if it was like a for-profit. The expectations would just be different. What I like here is also that people are helping creating the stuff that they're maybe not that excited about. The communal meals, for example. It's easier to contribute with something that you're passionate about, training or yoga or something. Yeah. But we also have a lot of stuff, finance, infrastructure, communal meals, that is just like a pain. And it's something that has a lot of value for the whole group, but it's also just hard, annoying work sometimes. And a lot of people don't mind helping out with those things. And had it been a company, higher price tag, would people do that kind of work? I'm not sure.
I can almost guarantee you won't, right? Like, why would you work for a company for free and they're charging people money? I think it creates the vibe of the village, the way it started. And especially one of the reasons I messaged Nikolai at the beginning and we started this whole thing was I like the idea of there being no coercive work. There's no work that people are doing that they actually don't want to do. If they don't want to do the work, there's no expectations in the entire community. And I like that idea. I don't like the idea of having to do certain things. For this whole thing to work, we do have a couple of major items, like Nikolai said, the communal meals and infrastructure. But what ends up happening there is the people who want to step up, they get a lot of praise and a lot of props for doing that. And they know that they're doing a really big thing for the whole community. So I think I love the idea of having this like non-economic mode of traveling with the whole group.
I want to get back to this a little bit, but first I think we mentioned in the first episode how much this costs for people to be in the traveling village.
Yeah, it's about $3,000 to $4,000.
Okay.
And the special thing about that amount of money is it's not going to places you don't know. It is literally coming back to you in the form of events for the community, food, communal spaces. What else? There's a couple other things.
So I think as far as the budget for the traveling village, it's broken down into communal meals, events, buffer, and spaces. Is that right?
Yeah.
Those four?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we made the budget mostly because we wanted to set an amount where people were committing to the project. Did you have a really low amount? Would people then be really committed to joining? So we wanted to find a balance between it being affordable and possible for people to do, but it should also be a big commitment. Like you're joining this because we also felt that we worked for a long time. We didn't want people coming in and then rubbing out and not really being a part of it. It should be a big decision, and then you join it. And it was just like a gut feeling when we made the budget, and there would probably be adjustments to it in the future. But I think it kind of worked out, don't you think?
I think so. I think we've mainly stuck with the guardrail.
We're in the middle of a storm.
Yeah, I think it might be actually too loud right now to keep going. It's extremely loud here. I feel like there's a stream.
There's some kids playing soccer behind us.
Yeah.
I think the budgets have actually kind of stayed, right? Like communal meals have stuck to their guardrails. We're actually not spending as much money as we could in Vietnam. The funny thing is, we didn't have all the processes in place for spending money. So a lot of people came in and were like confused about how to use the money. And everyone's answer was, well, we have to figure it out. And that took time. So the first couple of weeks, I don't think we spent much money as a community in Vietnam. And then in Thailand, we've actually been spending more money because we've had more excursions, more activities that people that were like subsidizing or sometimes just paying for.
And it was encouraged.
It was encouraged.
Yeah, it was.
Right.
We definitely wanted that to happen. So I think we're doing better and we have more processes in place. So we have like a whole proposal system now. We've got like a couple tiers of proposal. We have the ability to just spend discretionary amounts of money. So up to $80. What is that? Like 75 euros. You can just spend the money. And it has to be on the calendar and you have to have told people about it. So you can't just like pull from the communal pot with zero expectations. But you don't need approvals from anyone. You can just do it yourself. You can host an event with communal money. So I think that's great. I think that's like an easier way for people to get access to the communal money. And it's lowered the friction for us to host lots of events. And that was the main reason we had the events budget to begin with. We want to make communal interactions easier with money, not harder.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go into each one of these has had its own little issues and things we've had to kind of iron out. So communal meals, for example. I think you had a certain way of looking at communal meals and not everyone has the same point of view in the village.
Yeah, I think what we did with the budget was that we split it up quite a lot. So in the budget, it actually says like how much money is set off per person, per meal in each location. And some people looked at the budget and they think like, okay, I'm paying this amount for a meal. And then they compare it to food, like street food or like going to a restaurant. And that was like I just saw it completely differently because I never saw it as I'm paying per meal or even paying for food. For me, it's like one big pot of money, and it's community glue. The communal meals is something that connects the whole group, and it's something that's stable. When we're changing locations and you're not living close to people, we always have the communal meals to meet up. And I think there's so much value around having that I just never saw it as paying for food. But, that's really a learning that someone can see it totally differently.
Yeah, there's definitely the tendency when let's say you pay $3,000 into a pot of money, there is the tendency to look at it and say, okay, everything we're doing, I am somehow putting a little bit of my money into, right? People actually view taxes like that, which is totally, it's a fair way of looking at it. But in this context, it does feel detrimental to me, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it promotes a way of looking at communal funds that is really hard for us as a group of people to manage those expectations. For example, as Nikolai said, if you look at every communal meal and you say, okay, in Vietnam, our budget is $9 per meal. Well, you can also get a banh mi for like $1 and you will get like the best banh mi you've ever had. So it's too high a bar for us to make the communal meal worth $9 of food. And so it's a great point.
Plus, I really like your point about, when you pay in the money, it's not your money.
Yeah, it's not.
Like, then it's the community's fund, and you should stop seeing it as now I spend $1 on this and one on that. And but it's still, I think it can be difficult.
Yeah.
It's something that's easier to say, but actually, like, getting your head around it like that is more.
It's a huge mindset shift, especially because, like, let's say you pay. I always kind of view it with, like, if you were in a country and you pay taxes, it's very hard for you to have like direct control over the money. But in the village, we have 19 families. So what we're trying to do as a group is make it easier for people to spend the money on things they would like and then just bring more people along.
Well, so now I want to get into events then, because you have a totally different view on this, I think, right? Maybe not.
Personally,
maybe not.
Let's say
events. The funny thing about events is, like, when we created the budget item, we didn't really know what events were for.
Yeah.
What even is an event?
Yeah.
In some ways is like confusing because sometimes it's purely an experiential thing. Sometimes it's, you need to buy, I don't know, a basketball to play basketball games. Is that an event?
Yeah.
A basketball game is an event, but now I'm spending money on the basketball.
We both had some challenges with the definition of that part of the budget, but also who is responsible for that part of the budget. Because with the communal meals, it's very clear because there's a work group for each location, and they're totally responsible for the budget. But what about events? Especially, we had an event group, or we had a party group, and it became an event group, but should they be responsible?
Group, and we weren't sure. There was no excursion budget, but maybe they could take in the events money.
So maybe we can, some of the things that we spend money on from the events part of the budget is everything from, we have these casual meetups where we discuss a topic, and then, we buy coffee and cake and stuff like that for the communal funds. Slow chats, yeah.
Because we had this incredible cafe in Vietnam called Cafe Slow.
Yeah.
I just want to put a shout out to Cafe Slow. We missed them.
The place right next door is called Slow Down.
Well, it's not the same.
Oh,
okay.
And not the same. No, not the same.
Okay, so what is your feeling though? So when all this money is spent on some kind of event or excursion, and I know both of us, we have challenges going on these because sometimes they're long days. We can't do it with our kids.
Yeah.
But then a lot of other people are taking advantage of that.
I go to every event because
you do.
My kid is somehow like chill.
She is.
She's just like, I go on like a full day snorkeling trip.
Can you not rub this in?
Sorry.
Okay.
I don't mean to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the communal funds are like both for like simple things, like we also have like the sundown drinks kind of things where it's just like people meet up and there's coconuts and stuff like that. But it also goes to like snorkeling trips and stuff like that. Not paying for the full trip, but paying for some of it.
Kind of subsidizing things, right?
Kind of subsidizing. And I think both you and I, like we go to a very small percentage of these things. So in theory, you could say that we are subsidizing the other people going on a snorkeling trip. And a few weeks ago, I was starting to actually have a problem with that, I think, because there were so many trips going on and there were snorkeling trips and and I was just working and I couldn't go on these trips. And that was the first time where I felt like, okay, I'm actually paying a lot of money into something where, the other people are getting the trips much cheaper. And
misplaced angst because we wanted to hang out with us.
Yeah, of course, it's because I wanted to also do the trips, but my situation is not laid out, so I can do a lot of trips right now. And I was starting to get this feeling, but I think it's kind of changing a little bit. And I think it's, a structure like this will never be fair. The money that we have and we have a lot of money for events and doing stuff has so many advantages. It's so powerful and there's so many things that we do. So I also, would feel really bad about removing it. But, that's the thing about it will never be fair, but to what degree it shouldn't be unfair. So you need to find a little bit of balance.
I really want to promote this mindset shift in the community. I don't know how successful this has been, but basically I want everyone to feel happy when 5, 10, 30 other people get together and do a thing.
Yeah.
Because I think building bonds between other people is super useful for the whole community. Useful for me and super useful to the whole community as well.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And it's just it makes for a better atmosphere all the time.
And a stronger village, I feel like.
But my point was just that I totally agree with that point, but there's a limit to things, because then at some point it can be, there's so many of the groups doing that and you're not part of it. And there's a limit where you start to feel that it's unfair, that you actually paid, I know, and I knew the whole time that I would probably not go on many of the events. So I would take less money from that pot, but there's just a limit to it. But one thing that I realized is that it's still not a lot of money, and in total what we're getting back from a community, maybe the value for us is the random meetups, and we have a morning where we're here at the beach and we randomly talk with other people from the village, and that there's so much value for us that it can't even be compared to the price that we have paid. So I think it's really a matter of not focusing so much on each amount, on each activity. That's the same thing about the meals. You can say, oh, I'm paying $12 for a meal in Thailand. It could have been $5, but you have to step back and see the whole picture, and then say, okay, you paid in $3,000 and you're part of something completely amazing. And what you're getting back is impossible to put a price tag on. But there's really different ways of looking at these things.
Yeah, I agree. And even, I can't remember which day it was, but there was one day where a lot of the village had gone on some excursion. And I think you were there too, but we were just kind of on our porches hanging out with the kids. And it was actually one of my
favorite days. Yeah, exactly.
Fun.
Yeah.
Because you can connect in different ways and it doesn't have to be on this excursion, but it's just really chill and fun.
And that's probably what I prefer. I'm not a trip kind of guy. I don't like to go on a trip where we have to leave at a specific time and there's a guide and stuff like that. I love when I have the energy for it and the kids are happy and stuff like that. That we had some hours there and it was amazing, and it was super simple, but all of the other things help make the connections and create that too. So it's all connected.
I think that specific part was I think all the older kids had gone off on this excursion.
Right.
It was really hard for the younger kids because it was a long snorkeling trip, and just having a toddler day was really fun here. And that's true of all of these things. It does work itself out in the end, but it's hard to take that long-term view. And we didn't know that going in. When we had this events money, we didn't have the idea that, okay, there's going to be small events, $80 and less. There's going to be medium-sized events that are $80 to $400. And then there's going to be big events that maybe the party, the events committee or there has to be large-scale discussion, right? That's all evolved in real time during the village. And so that's, I think, caused a lot of that has caused a lot of discussion. I wouldn't even call them problems. It's a lot of discussion. One of my favorite early events that we're now finally ready to talk about is the banana apparel purchase.
Okay, let's talk about this. This was a big deal at the time.
Yeah, this was a huge
now
thing.
now we've like calmed down about it, I think, and everyone
And it's
has some
become like a
space for it.
village meme, I think,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the center of this because it was me and Retia. There was an inside joke at one of the excursions. And Vietnam, and Hoi An in particular, is very famous for this banana apparel, right? And so we came back from this excursion, and a lot of people were like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we were all decked out in banana gear? And so we were like, well, we have this events budget. We haven't used a lot of it. Maybe it makes sense for everyone to pick out like one banana apparel of your choice, and we'll do like, I don't know, what do you do with like apparel? It's some swag, right?
And then we're also coming to Banana Beach, so it's kind of like
Which is the name of this.
We
This
thought
is where we are now.
We're like, okay, we're going to be in Banana Beach. Let's have banana apparel. Now, what ended up happening is a lot of different money talks were happening below the surface. And this actually happens a lot in like any group of people. But this one purchase, I think, surfaced how people felt about influence over the money, how they felt about different ethical ramifications. Like some people don't like material goods. Some people are worried about the environmental impact.
Right.
All of these are fair, like completely understandable things when taken in isolation. But then this event kind of bubbled to the surface, and then it did feel like it kind of blew up because there was a huge village meeting where we had to talk about, like, we had to call an emergency special meeting of the finance group. And we all kind of sat around and were like, hey guys, let's talk about money again, because it's been, everyone's a little bit confused about how this event's money should be used. And clearly this was the wrong forum, because we basically took this singular event and it blew up into this huge money discussion. So we wanted to keep the banana apparel purchase to the side, talk about money. And we did that. I think there's lots of interesting results of that. One of them is that we don't want to make ethical claims on use of money. I thought that was one of the really important things that as a village we discussed. And we said, look, people are going to have ideas. It might not vibe with you specifically. Like, let's say you're opposed to snorkeling because of the environmental impact, sunscreen in oceans killing coral. That's a totally fair point. I'm not saying you have that.
I don't.
But I'm not saying, but let's say you do.
Yeah.
And you don't like that people are using communal money on a snorkeling trip. That's totally fair. But it doesn't make sense to call something out as unethical and, demonize a portion of the village for going on the trip.
I also think that it should be mentioned that we have a structure for blocking things.
Yeah.
So you could come up with a consensus decision if there's something that you think is really off, something that is dangerous, it takes the village in a completely wrong direction, or it's like morally really wrong.
And one person can block, right?
Yeah, then you can propose that we have a consensus decision, and if one person blocks it, then, it's off. So I think that's a tool we have for, like, extreme cases. But what I think the discussions we had was, like, you have to put sometimes your own opinions aside, because I can have an opinion about the environment, and I don't like that communal fund goes to buying stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not something that's morally wrong, or that's, taking the village in a completely wrong direction. So it would be way too much to have a consensus around that, in my opinion. But we have the tool if someone came up with a proposal or use some of the money for something more extreme.
This event really showed all the differences of how people view money. Like you said at the very beginning of the podcast, like, money is a triggering topic for most people, and I would say for all people. Like, people have different stories about money. Like, personally, I remember feeling a lot of scarcity growing up there are reasons for that, but it's just how I felt. And then as I grew up, I wanted to never feel scarce, and I have that money story in my head as I approach a lot of these problems. Yeah. I don't know what your stories are, so I'm kind of curious. But anyway, everyone is bringing that different story into the village, and it does cause...
It's different money mindset.
Yeah.
But I would say that, there has been some questions about, like, why does it cost so much money if it's non-profit? And why even have the money? Why just, we even had someone say, like, why there's so much structure and it's too much. It should just be like a WhatsApp group and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I think my experience now is that it's been the completely right model for us, and that the money has had such... there's been so many great things about it, and I think there's a distinction between intentional community and an organic community, and this is more intentional. Yeah. You sign up for it. You sign up for the whole period, not just half of it, and then you move on. You commit to a super big thing, and that's what I really liked about the money, is that it has caused problems. The problems has then caused discussions. Discussions has then brought the whole group closer together. Yeah, and just that little thing has been annoying. It's been hard work. It's been frustrating, but it has a lot of value for the group, I think.
I think the other thing, because we had a village meeting yesterday around a totally different thing around money, but I do think it's interesting because a lot of times I will go into it with a certain mindset or a certain view on something, and all of a sudden people start talking. I'm like, oh, okay, I now see your point of view. So I think it's helpful having these village discussions. It's not like people are off kind of like having their own discussions about it and sort of making their own opinions. It's like, okay, we're deciding this as a group, which I think is helpful.
Yeah.
And it's cool. They bubble up, right? Like, and this is the way I envision it, and it's actually happening. So it's really cool, where I did want it to be super organic. Like, two of us talk, have a disagreement, it bubbles up. We kind of like talk to more people, and then we talk about it in the big forum. And it's really interesting. Because, yesterday we talked for at least an hour about money.
It was longer than that.
Yeah, it was longer than that.
It was probably at least 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, should we discuss that? Because that was the subject of, can we use communal funds to pay for village members' time? Let's say someone has a professional skill and they want to create something. Can we use village funds paying that person
for their time?
And the point being that, we pay a lot of different people in the locations where we are, across the street. We hire someone, we pay them fairly. That money could have gone to a member of the village who has a skill, and we had a long discussion about that. So I think the discussion was, first, can we use village funds on it? Second was, can we pay each other for these things? And it was I think it was a really good discussion, actually, because it's I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, like, I took a pretty hardline stance at the meeting yesterday, and I hope it was all meant with love and care, and but it's just how I view money. But yesterday my stance was, I think the seed of the traveling village was non-economic, and I want to keep it I want to keep money out of it as much as possible. And I do have specific reasons for this. But my biggest reason is, if we had started it off as a company, which might have been simpler, if you think about it, for whatever, 80 people, it might have been simpler to have a CEO or someone on the hook to just go to and be like, hey man, this sucks. Can you go fix it?
Yeah.
But we didn't do that. We started it off with a structure where, Nikolai Michel had this idea. Lehang and Nana also had a similar idea. They kind of talked about it. We organically came in. I didn't ask for any equity when me and Ritya came on as founding families. And we sort of knew all the work we're going to put in, it's just going to come back to us on the travel. And we don't even want to think about it as a money thing. But there are some really good points. In some cases, it's really strange not to get paid. If you do a lot of work for something and no one pays you, a lot of times in the real world, you feel taken advantage of. I've worked jobs where, a manager will ask me to do something that's not in my job description. I'm like, what the hell, dude? Why am I working nights and weekends? I have a fixed salary, I have fixed hours. there are times where I've also been happy to do extra work. It's a way of looking at things that really cool to discuss, I think.
Yeah, and I think the point was there's no right or wrong. It's just, what is this traveling village?
What makes sense for this context?
Right.
Yeah, and I think community will never be perfect. So it's impossible to make a perfect decision. But my point with this was that as soon as we start using communal funds on village members' time, then it's kind of a point of no return. It's a door that is really difficult to close again, and it opens up for so many different things. And, if someone is getting paid for something, we have a lot of people doing yoga or training, but also, professional skills are being used in creating the communal meals, running the finance work group and stuff like that.
For Japan,
it's really
needed to find. What are they called? They're called finders.
Fixers. We have fixers. Yeah,
I would never have known that that's what you should do, but because we have people in the community who have planned trips before.
I don't know what that is.
We have a local people who help create the meal.
Okay.
But you just need these people, otherwise it's impossible to plan things, especially in Japan. We needed a fixer in Thailand also. With it.
And my point was that, I haven't really thought that much about my time commitment, the skills that I've put in, because it's all been into a communal pot and, for greater community purpose. But I could feel that if someone were getting paid, I would start, putting a money, a dollar value on what I'm contributing with. And there's so many cases where it's so difficult. So I think the conclusion was very clear yesterday at the meeting that most people didn't feel that communal funds should be spent on paying each other, because it opens up for so many wrong things, difficult things, negative things. But it's just funny because there are cases where it actually makes sense that you would get paid here, but it's just when you open that door. So it's it's better. Yeah, you will miss some things and it will not be perfect. But the negative things will just be too much.
And the second discussion was a little more, that was more contentious. And it was the discussion of should any two people be able to, or should you be able to market goods and services, one, but also
within the village. Right?
And should you offer professional services at all? And that was where I felt like I was in the minority, where I still feel in the 4 months that you're traveling with people, I think a great norm would be, let's not do any of, put that aside. There's, so many more, there's billions of people to monetize. Try to keep this group as close to non-economic as possible. And again, it's not because I'm opposed to economics. I actually think an entrepreneurial group, I actually shared this with a couple members. I think if we plan you're starting a new business, travel with other people starting a new business for 4 months all across South America, and maybe we actually go to tech hubs or entrepreneur hubs, that is an amazing idea, and I would start that as a company. Just let's do that. But when you posted the idea, and I'm actually curious to hear why you were thinking about it being non-economic to begin with. Why did you? I just don't think it fits with the context of how this was started. And that was the main point I tried to put across. And I don't think I was I wasn't fully successful yesterday, but
I think we're on the same page regarding what we would personally do.
Yeah.
We wouldn't promote stuff. I would not go here and try to get customers.
I've asked you business questions. I've asked you, hey man, how much would you pay this guy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. But my point was just that we also have to keep it simple, and, we shouldn't create a lot of rules. And you had a good point that, we can create rules, but we don't have any legal, we don't have a police, there's no enforcement of the rules.
Even so, of course, where you would get kicked out of the village, they are also illegal in the countries we're traveling in. So there's already enforcement.
Yeah.
So I think the getting kicked out of this village is the least of your problems at that point. So anyway.
but I just think that, keeping it simple and not having too many, rules would be nice. And Andy, another founding member, had a really nice point about, some of these things are not really problems we have right now. It's problems we could have. What about just letting it play out? And I kind of like that idea too, because you can make so many rules and so much structure and say, but there's edge cases and there's, so let's just let it play out. And that's why I thought that I think we should 100% decide communal funds are not being spent on the village members' time. But, if I can buy something from you, like, we shouldn't be too black and white about that, because there's a difference. We have a member, Heidi, who is creating I think it's 6 or 8 times, like a workshop where a lot of people are going on Saturdays. And she's doing it completely for free. It's a new format for her. She's learning, she's getting feedback. And I think that has value for the people who are joining. And it has value for her, but there's no money. No. But let's say that I'm going to the workshops and I'm learning something and I'm getting something from it. And I say, I could really use Heidi for like a 10-session coaching thing. I don't feel it would be right to request that for free, but that would be like pretty normal to get paid for that.
But then would you not? So in your view, if that were to happen, let's say, could they do it within the 4 months that we're traveling, or would they have to wait until?
That was somewhat, I think, maybe your point, that just try to not do it. And that's my point too. But I'm just saying that stuff could happen where just, for 2 people, it just makes a lot of sense to work together and there has to be money. So I just don't want to have a black and white setup where it's, you can't do it. But I definitely think that our social norm should be that you're not using our Slack community or our communal meals to push your business ideas and get clients,
Yeah, I think that's the norm. I just feel like sometimes when it's not explicitly written down, it doesn't get ingrained. And this has been a norm from the get-go. This being non-solicitation, we're not really a business community. We're just and if we were a business community, I think we would have handled all the interviews and selection parts at the beginning totally differently. So I feel like there's no problem writing it down and just saying, it's not really encouraged to do business activities. I think it would cause, we actually had a couple people get into business before the trip, and it would have been awkward if that whole business relationship ended poorly. It just would have been a tough sell because you have to see these people all the time for 4 months.
But a lot of people are starting to build businesses where they then, we have Martin who is creating a training group and he's coaching people and he's getting a lot of feedback and he's learning so much.
I think basically a great place to learn about yourself, learn a new skill, and then maybe turn that into a business because you have an audience that you're sharing a skill with, and then what a great place to, try out a new thing. But
their opposing point was that, someone said that I, as a village member, want to support the other members. So if you're creating a business and I like your product, then I want to buy it. And so it's really difficult because there's so many pros and cons. But I think the overall conclusion of the conversation was that, it's a community where it's not a transactional community. We are participating with our time and our skills. And Silvana, who had been quiet the whole meeting, she had a perfect point that, if it was very much based on money, it would be very much like $1 in, and then you would get, a direct value from that. So it would be 1-to-1. But now we are contributing with some skills and some time, and you're maybe putting 10 in, but you're getting 100 back. Yeah. And that's the way it should be.
Right. And I know that if I had actually paid all of you for the time you've spent, and the whole year leading up to this, I wouldn't have been able to afford the trip. Yeah. You guys put thousands of hours into it.
Yeah. So it was also
but I just love Silvana's point because it was we were talking and talking and talking, and then she, in 30 seconds, it was just summarize. Yeah. This is the conclusion. I was really nicely put.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I could afford the trip because it also doesn't make sense for me as a Bluetooth person to plan trips like this. I'm not very good at it anymore. So like, I'm glad. It was really fun to pick up a new skill and like, hey, 8 of us were planning out like stuff. Like my wife Nritya is so much better. You know, she's really
I wouldn't say better, but she's amazing.
yeah. And you wouldn't call me amazing though.
I call you amazing in a lot of different settings.
I have different skills, but you know, bringing like 19 families to like 3 locations was not one of them.
No, I want to say in the planning, one skill that was really helpful with you is that you, most of the time, you have a different way of seeing things and you have a way of reframing things and you have questions to things. So when you have a whole group that's on a path, then sometimes you have an opposing point, and I think that's been a really big power of being the founding families that we had those kind of things. Yeah, that is really cool.
I think the stuff that we've learned building this is invaluable for sure.
Yeah,
I can't really put a dollar sign on that. So
that's like it at being here. Yeah,
it's a great experience.
So we're gonna have to wrap up, but I think this is probably gonna be our last podcast in Thailand. I think our next one will probably be in Japan.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably, yeah. Which is pretty soon.
Really soon.
Yeah.
So,
I know you guys have turned the corner on Koh Lanta, but I'm pretty excited for Japan.
I'm excited about Japan too. I love Japan.
I'm excited too.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a totally different way
It's going to be an insane contrast.
Yeah.
We'll be all spread out. So even for us, it's going to be very different.
Yeah.
Our podcasts are going to be harder to schedule.
Yeah.
Even though they're pretty hard to schedule, even
now, yeah.
Right.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, you can go to our Instagram page, traveling_village. And we will see you next time in Japan.